Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
Guys.
I seen Paul clapping in the background. That was way before it was even over. He kind of said, "How you doing, Damian?"
Good. How are you guys?
I wish I was fishing like you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I truly do wish I was fishing like you. How was fishing before we even get too far? Was fishing good?
Great. It was great. It was got on a flurry that lasted about maybe about 45 minutes, and it was almost back-to-back casts. So it was pretty good.
Yeah.
Nice.
We won't tell you where you. Let's not say where you were at because I know you like dropping your video after the bite is done. So, but did you get them on a spoon?
No, I didn't. I actually caught him shallow.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, really, really dirt shallow.
Yeah.
Glide baits, or are you getting them on top water?
I'm throwing a blade jig, LV500. Basically, honestly, they'll bite anything right now.
Really?
Yep.
You
It is
getting any
a
of
wide open.
size, or are they all like 20s?
They're all 20 plus.
Well, I mean,
That's a lot of
good day.
information.
Yeah.
That's above Damian's spot. That's a lot of information.
I mean, it's like,
I know now.
nothing to hide. I mean, it's just some fun fishing stuff, you know.
Yeah.
Did you bring home dinner?
No, I didn't bring any. I didn't bring it home. I just was out there for fun.
Okay. But anyways, Taz is supposed to join us as well. But as a lot of you guys know, he is no longer just a kayak angler or an angler in general. He has a tackle shop. So he's still closing up shop right now. So as soon as he closes up shop, I'll have him jump on and we'll add him on. But I think we can go ahead and ask you first, Damian. The whole topic of tonight, reason why I wanted to have you and Taz on is because you guys were guys that predominantly fishes a lot of spoons. Oh, there he is. The man of the hour.
Have a lot of success with it too.
Really big smile. You guys hear me?
Yep, we got you, Taz.
Cool.
Yeah, but I was asking Damian, or I was about to ask Damian. Question for both of you guys. The whole topic of tonight is spoon fishing. So, there's different categories in spoons. There's flutter spoons, there's jigging spoons. I don't know if you want to throw, blade bait in the spoon category, but it's also a middle bait as well. I just want to throw it out there and let you guys just talk about it. because quite frankly, there's a lot to cover in spooning. So whoever wants to take it off and go first, where to use which one, as in what type of spoon, where to use a spoon, why, when, where, why, and what on any kind of spoon.
Yeah, and
So-
you don't have to give us colors or like specific retrieves, but if you could at least point us into the direction of like some styles and maybe like examples of ones that you like to use, it would be great too. Because the spoon category, as somebody who has attempted with no knowledge, is a bit intimidating sometimes.
Yeah. Beginner
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
So I guess like two simple categories or a couple of simple categories where guys can, just pull up, say Taco Warehouse, or say they pull up into your shop tags and they're just like, yeah, I have a jigging spoon, a flutter spoon, a casting spoon. It just goes on and on and on. So
Usually when I'm on a spoon bite, it's gonna be a flutter spoon and a jigging spoon. So the jigging spoon is when I see them right below me, where I can drop it straight down real fast on them. And then if I'm seeing them on my, I don't have forward facing sonar. If I see them on the side, then I'll turn around and cast that way with the flutter spoon. So
for you, Damian,
It's the same, except that I have forward facing sonar, so I'm really looking to see the mood of the fish when I present a spoon to them. Then that'll really tell me which spoon I need to be throwing. And a lot of times with forward facing sonar, you can immediately kind of tell how big the bait is by throwing your spoon at them, and then you can really match the hatch that kind of way. If your flutter spoon is a little too big, you can downsize to a smaller flutter spoon or even go to a jigging spoon. But I found that to get fish to react quickly, the jigging spoon definitely has been better for me. But if you're around fish that are around bait and they're super picky, a lot of times that flutter spoon does play a bigger role. Like, for Tolik, for example, we all fish Tolik. These fish are really keen on bait, but I couldn't get them to go on a jigging spoon, but I was able to catch a few on a floater spoon. The reason why is because the floater spoon is much more bigger, so you can blow up the bait and it'll spook all the bait, and the bass will then grab the bait, then will grab the floater spoon. But you couldn't do that with the jigging spoon. So it really kind of depends on which situation you're kind of in, and that's one of the things about forward facing sonar. You can immediately cut all that time down and pick which one that is better for that situation.
so how did you differentiate when to switch between a flutter spoon and a jigging spoon, Taz? Because you don't have forward facing sonar. Well, some of the guys that are listening don't have forward facing sonar. So besides trial and error, is there like anything else, like a timing deal, or say you see the streaks on your 2D a certain way, whether they're on bait, not on bait, to kind of decide a jigging spoon or flutter spoon? Or do you just go through the whole trial and error?
Definitely just a trial and error. I'm gonna start off with the flutter spoon just because that's my confidence, spoon. And then if they're not biting it, then I'll downsize to the jigging spoon, and maybe it's the size that matters, or maybe it's the way that spoon's falling faster than the flutter spoon, and just pretty much break it down from there.
Yeah, I guess I have a question too. Like, because when you say a flutter spoon, like most people think of some sort of a horizontal presentation. At least I do. Do you ever fish a jigging spoon horizontally, or do you mostly fish it straight down below you when you graph fish?
When I first started, yeah, it was more just I would cast that jigging spoon out there. For example, Pine Flat, when I heard about spooning in the wintertime, and we were doing well on tournaments because everyone was struggling. We found them on flats, and that's kind of all everybody was talking about, the Hopkins, the Colin Cordells. That was way before the whole Magnum flutter spoon craze, Outbackies, and now it's like I kind of just use the flutter spoon more for that approach versus like just vertical jigging, because the flutter spoon will dart out away from your kayak or boat, and it just makes it harder to get it right on top of the fish.
Gotcha. But do you ever like with that jigging spoon make bomber casts and just hop it off the bottom or hop
Oh
it
yeah,
mid column and stuff?
yeah,
You do as well. So it's not
definitely.
really that because like when I think of a jigging spoon, I think of like a 2 ounce dust spoon, right? I feel like
Uh-huh.
that's pretty common for most people, or maybe the 1.5 or something. But I would never picture taking 1 to 2 ounce chunk of lead and hopping it. I would picture I see fish on 2D because I also don't have forward facing, and I'll drop it straight down on them as fast as I can and rip it through the school until one reacts. But I would never think to, make a long cast on a flat, for example, and kind of do like a yo-yo retrieve like you would with an LV500.
I think it also depends on the depth too. If let's say you're in maybe 20 to 30 feet, and you can't really get them to react because they're sitting on top of the school, and by backing off and throwing a jigging spoon over there, that'd be a better option than just to sit on top of them. Versus like more in the wintertime where you're like maybe spooning in 50 to 60 feet, you can kind of sit on top of those fish, and you don't really disturb them.
Gotcha.
So I'm curious, when you're fishing a jigging spoon and let's say they hit it as it's dropping on a jigging spoon. So say you see a school of fish and you pitch it out there, you pitch down to them, and they hit it before it hits, say before it goes to the school of fish. So say it's, the fish are in like 20 foot, suspended 20 foot, and you drop a jigging spoon on them, and they hit it before it hits the 20-foot mark, let's just say hypothetically, would you switch over to a flutter spoon because they're feeding much higher up and you want it to flutter more? Or when do you, I guess, determine when to switch from a jigging spoon versus a flutter spoon? Because I feel like it's almost like punching, where if they eat at the top of the mat, you can go for lighter weight or hold it at the top of the mat.
No, definitely. Yeah. If they're hitting, like let's say if I'm in 50 foot of water and they're hitting 20, then yep, I'm definitely going to the flutter spoon. But if they're close to the bottom, then I do prefer that jigging spoon though.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
For you, Damian?
For me, if they're biting the jigging spoon, I'm gonna stick with the jigging spoon until I've caught enough of them. Then, if I need a bigger fish, then I'll go with the flutter spoon because the flutter spoon definitely has much more draw power. But to get them to react quicker, the jigging spoon definitely can get you more fish in the boat quicker. So, if they're biting the jigging spoon, I'm gonna keep throwing it until I start, feeling like I need a bigger bite. Then I'll present the flutter spoon. That's just for me personally. Sometimes that flutter spoon, they kind of get it like a really good look at it. They won't bite it because it doesn't move as fast as a jigging spoon. A lot of times jigging spoon, it's so quick they either have to grab it or just let it pass. So most of the time they're gonna grab the jigging spoon right away. Sometimes you switch to that flutter spoon, you won't get those bites, but when you do get a bite, it's gonna be a better fish. But that's just how I fish it.
Interesting. I want to bring up a cool. Oh, go ahead, Paul.
Conditions. What do you guys? What's the ideal condition to be throwing a spoon, per se, jigging or flutter spoon? Would you guys prefer?
Definitely sunny days. A little bit of chop on the water helps. Overcast days just don't do well for me. But sometimes that gold spoon comes in clutch on cloudy days. Mm-hmm. Or a little bit of color to it. Yeah. Versus just like a silver or hologram, maybe white and paint, the morning dawn color.
Interesting. You, Damian?
Yeah,
Damian?
I would say the same thing too. A sunny day, you need some wind. Definitely need some wind. Definitely helps a lot. The more wind for me, the better. And like Taz says, the cloudy days, those are just very, very inconsistent. Those fish, they just don't seem to bite the spoon that well on a cloudy day.
Interesting.
Good information.
Well, Tolok was a very sunny day, and we all sucked. But there was no wind too, though, so that probably didn't help.
Yeah.
But there was jet skiers. That was breaking the water surface, right? Wouldn't that have helped? Yeah. Yeah, I wanted to bring up a little story because first time I met Taz, I didn't know it was Taz, and that was on the home pond, and I seen Taz catching them on a flutter spoon, and it was on the same exact spot that I was catching some 9s and 10s on, and we were duking it out during the monthlies during that month, but that was fun. Um, do you guys get more bites when you're popping a spoon, or when you're slowly raising it? So we'll do both, as in for flutter spoons and for jigging spoons. Which is your retrieve of choice?
For me, I am always changing up the cadence on it. I'm sure you guys seen some of my videos where I'm not just, up, down, up, down. It's like hard rips, short rips, short hops on the bottom, burning it back in, feeding it back down just to change it all up, just to really fire up that school.
Damien?
Yeah, for me, it's the same. You got to really change the cadence spot. Since forward facing sonar, you immediately know what mood they are in, and you know what retrieve is working best. Well, for me, I personally like to just burn it to the boat and then feed it back line. Usually, a lot of times that triggers a lot of bites. These fish that are gonna follow all the way up, they usually burn up with the lure, and then once you feed the line back into them, they usually run right into the spoon and they grab it then. That's what I found has been most successful for me. Is just burning the spoon back.
Interesting. Because you know how a lot of Japanese anglers like to keep it away as much as possible. They don't really like slowing down lures to let the fish get a real good look at it. A lot of Japanese anglers really like playing that cat and mouse game, but it seems like when a bass is on it, they actually like burn it quicker. So that's interesting that you actually feed it back to them instead of burn it even away. Well, I guess if it's already at the boat, you really don't have much of a choice. You kind of have to feed it back. Yeah.
So I do have a question then with flutter spoons for you. Because like there are so many different varieties. There are wide ones, there are narrow ones, there are bent curved ones, there are like cupped ones. Where do you start in that world of flutter spoons? What's a good point to enter into the idea of throwing a flutter spoon? I guess I'll give it to you, Taz, first, and then you, Damien.
You mean as far as like the design, like how they work, or
even just like in a specific, example of one that you would recommend as like a universal beginner starter?
got some spoon here.
Is there any spoons in there that are not on the market, Taz?
I got some of those Daiwa Steve spoons that you won't find it around town. But yeah, something like this where I guess you can say it's like an Indiana blade versus like, the Jackal one. This is kind of like a weird, I guess in a way like a willow leaf. And then you got
Must be nice to just pull spoons off the back like that.
and then like this new Big Larry, how it's more like narrow towards the bottom. This is going to be, I guess you could say, more like a willow leaf. And so they're going to have different flutters when you're ripping it and when it's falling. It's going to be faster flutter, a little bit slower, more flutter. And then like versus like a Dixie Jet where it's just real wide, I think this is going to be more like a lot more flutter, and it's going to glide out farther too.
So
when you say glide out farther, what do you mean?
As it just travels backwards further than a lot of spoon, where it's just kind of more, I guess you could say, like a straight down. So like if you're fishing docks, for example, it'll glide further back underneath the docks.
So the more narrow the butt end of a flutter spoon is, the more it's going to go vertical versus as the more fat the the back end of the spoon, the more it's going to want to kind of stay up in the water column, I guess you could say, to swim, to feed back more, right?
Right.
That's what you're saying. Interesting. I never considered it that way, but that makes a lot of sense.
So, like for the flutter spoon, I've been liking the Jackal one for that reason. And the Daiwatis, which is very similar to this one. These will definitely drop down a lot faster, won't flutter as much. And so I think that's key to getting those bites on the drop.
Gotcha. Damien?
He's hiding.
Are you okay, Damien?
I think.
Must have lost connection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have a question. I guess, or should we? Or is Damien coming back in? Do you see him?
Oh, go ahead.
Oh.
Yeah, go ahead. I'll bring him back in. We'll re-ask him.
So I guess this is more a question of, like, is it experience or just like time with the spoons? Like, how do you know how a spoon flutters, right? Because I mean, you, Taz, you probably had, just so much years of experience. You can look at a spoon and you know how it's going to travel in the water. But whenever I go to a wall of spoons, I'm overwhelmed because I'm just like, okay, I don't know how any of these spoons are going to be traveling. And you just showed us some examples, but with the array of just spoons that are available in the market, it's like, how can you go to a wall of spoons and be like, okay, maybe this one is probably going to be more like universal in that sense?
I think all your 5-inch flutter spoons going to work the same, especially if it's like a similar design, just like the.
It's just funny because every time you can just turn around and grab a spoon.
Like this would be standard, the Nichols Lake 4 flutter spoon, 5-inch, weighs in at 1 1/8 ounce. It's going to be similar to the ones that I get and I, sell. The action is going to be the same. I think the biggest, even from the Strike King ones, a lot of people tell me that they buy the Strike King flutter spoon and they never get bit on it. And I think one key thing is definitely having like a feather treble hook. That'll definitely get you some more bites. But for the most part, all your 5-inch flutter spoon, if it's the same design, it's going to all work the same. It's going to fall the same. So if you're not sure and you're on a wall, like with all this different style spoon, 5-inch, I would say is standard. 4-inch, that kind of falls into a different category just because I feel like it just doesn't sink as fast. So maybe if the fish are higher up in the water column, and then like your 6 and 7, if you're around bigger fish, want to draw bigger bites, that's kind of when you go to like a 6 or an 8-inch or something bigger.
How do you shop for spoons, Damien?
Me, I've been experimenting spoons for a long time. I found the ones that I really throw all the time now. And I'm pretty picky with spoons, so I would say if you're looking to just catch a lot of fish, the one that Taz has in the shop, I remember when Taz was getting them, I was coming in to clear the shelf of them because they're just so good. I mean, just the other day I came in, I bought like 7 or 8 of them. It's the Jackal counterback. That is a very, very unique spoon for a 5-inch spoon. And the best way to describe it is it feels like a big finesse spoon. That's what it is. It has a lot of weight to it, and it casts better than any 5-inch flutter spoon you're gonna find on the market. It casts really great, especially if you're using live scope forward fishing sonar. You can really hit the targets. And one of the unique thing about the spoon is its action. A lot of spoons majority of the spoons are very, very similar. So it's when you buy a spoon, another brand is be almost identical. So this one is very unique in its own way. You know, the actual action on an actual traditional kind of flutter spoon is that it'll flutter for a bit and it'll flutter out to a certain direction. So it's not very consistent. So, and that's what gets a lot of bites too, is because its action is always kind of different. Like it's always catching water and shooting off into a different direction. It's shooting backwards. But the Jackal counterback, what it actually do is it'll shimmy on the way down backwards. So instead of a really hard flutter and thump, it's very subtle, but it shimmies on the way it's down. And that's one of the things that gets bit a lot. I think these fish are kind of so used to the thumping of what a regular traditional spoon does. So when they see that shimmy and it's not moving a whole bunch of water, it definitely gets a lot of bites. And it's really heavy. It gets down really quickly. And if you're scoping, you can keep track of it because it just goes in one direction. It doesn't flutter out of sight. And especially if you're fishing docks and stuff and you're trying to get it behind structure, it shoots really far for a 5-inch spoon. That's one of the things. That's one of the ones I would recommend. I throw that one a lot as a Jackal counterback. And then for jigging spoon, I personally throw the Dual Realis drag metal. This is the one I throw majority of the time. It comes with a nice stinger hook as well. But this is a 30 grams. This is the glow one. I throw this one and the real Kisu most of the time. It has no action, so you're gonna drop it down on a fish and you're just gonna burn it up. When it has no action, it actually tangles less. You can pop it off the bottom. You can flop it on the ground and get these fish that are just picking up bait fish off the ground to bite. And these are the two spoons that I've kind of really just stuck to. Throughout this entire year, is just those are the two main spoons I've been throwing a lot.
So it's a duo. I've been wondering what brand that was.
Yeah, it's a Dual Realis drag metal. That's if you're gonna buy the drag metal, get the 30 grams and the 40 grams. Those are the two sizes that you want. You don't want anything lighter than that or anything heavier than that.
Just probably because it either falls too slow or falls too fast.
Too fast.
Yeah. It's too fast, and then when you go to the 20 grams, its size is really, really small. So
Yeah, and for those of you that don't metric, 28 grams is 1 ounce. So 30 grams is slightly heavier than an ounce. 40 grams is about 1.5 ounces. Sorry.
Yeah, it's actually even though it's not like a 2 ounce, but it has no action. So when it's sinking, it just shoots to the bottom. It doesn't do any flutter or anything like that. Like the Dove spoons, those guys would still kind of flutter. The Hopkins would still flutter. This spoon won't flutter, so it actually gets down faster than those kind of spoons.
The only spoon I've successfully caught fish on in a jigging spoon category is actually the 6th Sense jigging spoon. But like you said, it's flat, so it actually flutters on the way down. So it's kind of like a mix of a heavy flutter spoon and a jigging spoon.
Yeah, it's like a hybrid.
The dust spoon for me just drops, but I have the 2 ounce one, so it's like way too heavy for me, honestly.
Does that duo jigging spoon, does that thing foul up a lot, Damian?
No, it doesn't foul at all.
Oh, it doesn't foul at all?
Nope.
Interesting.
The only time where it's gonna foul is the fish blow on it. You know, they charge at it and then they turn on it. Then that's when it'll foul. But if you're jigging it down there, I've had that issue with, the dust spoon in the past where I'm jigging it and all of a sudden, the fish start coming in on it and I try to work it aggressive and then it foul itself, you know?
Yeah.
I don't have this issue with this Dual Realis spoon. You can work it extremely aggressive and it won't foul, so you can trigger those bites.
Nice.
Time to go on eBay.
Yeah.
They're kind of hard to find now too. I mean, they're kind of selling out, so I was like, man, I can't get the good colors now too. So I'm just like, man, it's kind of.
Do you have any in store, Taz?
I don't. I've been searching.
Darn. Damian must have bought you all out. Is probably what happened.
I keep buying them so nobody can get them. That's what it is.
Yeah.
I remember when Taz was getting those Jack back out. I was like, man, I gotta go get all of them so nobody can get them. You know, just.
Yeah. Do you have any? You have them in there, huh, Taz? I can see in the
do.
back. Those Jackal counters.
Yep, back here.
Ruh-roh. Damian better go buy them all.
I know, I've got to clear them out now. I know I just bought a whole bunch of them the other day.
Yeah. I'm gonna force everybody to go into Tad's shop and fight over spoons tomorrow or something.
Yeah, no kidding. Maybe I have to ask for a special early opening so I can pick some up to try.
You're gonna have
tomorrow.
people waiting outside the shop before it opens.
Yeah, that's crazy. Time of year, you know. When do you guys like throwing a spoon? You know, whether it's a flutter spoon or a jigging spoon. Time of year, you know, what are you guys looking for? Are you guys looking for suspended fish, chasing bait, on flats? You know, fish that are on the bottom. You know, what is your prime pattern where you guys like to target fish up? You know, to get that spoon bite. If you want to go ahead and take that one, you know.
Usually right after the spawn is when I start throwing it, all the way till pre-spawn. I know a lot of people, they think it's just a late fall, winter time thing, but when I won Don Pedro, I think that was in June or July, and they were really keyed in on the flutter spoon. I ran out. I called Damian. I was like, I know you're on your way. Do you got an extra flutter spoon? And
I gave you some. I gave you my
you did.
only one.
Yep. But yeah, basically the best time is when the shads are moving up to spawn. So that's usually when I start throwing it. It does slow down a little bit, but once they pull out again, I mean, you can definitely start throwing the flutter spoon again. So I'd say it's probably year round, definitely year round. Mm-hmm.
And you like targeting those roaming schools of suspending fish? Is what you like to do with it?
Yep, yeah. For me, earlier in the year, like let's say January, February, I target the creek channels leading back to like your major spawning flats. You know, they're feeding still out deep. You can catch them during that time. And then it's just kind of like reverses, you know, the bass go up spawn, they pull back out, they're back out there chasing the shad, and I go right back to those areas, mouth of creek arms. If I can find a really good flat with next to deep water, I'll definitely be focusing on that. I find that to be better, I'd say late fall, winter time, those flats near deep water. And those bait fish, they'll just hang out there on those flats, and yeah, they'll stay there all winter long.
How about you, Damian? When do you like throwing?
I really like, you know, I like Kat says, it's kind of a year-round kind of deal. It just depends on really the situation. You know, it gets really good right after the spawn. You can catch some pretty big post spawners. But I have found that during the pre-spawn to spawn, you know, you can find those fish that are not ready to move up yet. And wherever you're throwing a jig deep, say if you're on a hump or a secondary point, and there's still big ones out deep, wherever you're going to be throwing a jig, you can throw a big old mag flutter spoon, and those fish will eat it. And a lot of times that bite is a really, really early morning deal. You know, right as soon as the sun comes up, you got like a good window, about an hour window to get those really big ones on a Magnum flutter spoon. That's really the time I really like the little Magnum flutter spoon. Is, you know, you're kind of during the spawn, pre-spawn kind of thing, and then once you get to kind of the spawn, then you're kind of hoping to catch those fish that are moving in, or you're trying to catch these fish that are moving out to stage out there. But for the most part, and then after the spawn, then it's really, the spoon's really good. You know, you find fish around trees or bridge pilings. These fish are just sitting around there. You can catch those fish on flutter spoons. And then really the jigging spoon's kind of like a hit miss during the warmer years. But as it gets colder, the jigging spoon really starts to come in, especially in the wintertime when you know, a lot of the fish, the bait fish is deeper, and the fish that seem to be better quality in the wintertime is the fish that are on the ground that you don't really pick up. And that's when the jigging spoon comes in play. You drop it down the bottom and you just flop it off the ground. You can get a lot of those bigger ones that are just waiting to feed off the baits that are dying and falling at the bottom, and you can catch those fish. So the colder it gets, I find that the jigging spoon kind of shines more, and it pretty much is a year-round thing, but it just really depends on what your fish are doing on your body of water.
So when you're saying flopping, you're talking about literally just like barely popping off the bottom, so that
Yeah.
it turns over. right? Is
Yeah,
what you mean by
it just
flopping it,
flips
right?
back and forth. It just flips back and forth. The treble hook doesn't even come off the ground. So basically, your bait is just bouncing off. The head you just flopping over and over.
Yeah. So almost like dragging a jig, but you're just literally popping it so it barely moves forward, or try not
Yep.
to move it forward, obviously. But yeah, same thing.
Mhm.
Scary. That's what
Sounds like donating a lot of jigging spoons.
yeah. That's exactly why I said scary. That's very scary.
I already have a hard enough time dragging bottom with a lipless because I feel like I'm gonna get snagged every 5th cast.
The good thing about the jigging spoon, if it does get snagged, it's so heavy that you can flop it out and pop itself out. So it's its own knocker.
Yep.
That's crazy.
I guess this is the difference between people who have confidence throwing a jigging spoon and those who look at it like it's a foreign chunk of metal.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. I mean, I throw an LV500 very similar to a jigging spoon, or sorry, not jigging spoon, a flutter spoon. Yeah, I fish it very similar to a flutter spoon. But I just don't have the confidence in fishing a flutter spoon for whatever reason. It's I'm essentially fishing it the same way,
It's
just
hard,
ripping it straight up. Yeah.
Like I guess my next question then, if we're gonna talk flutter spoons, is you said like a 5-inch is standard. When you pick up a 5-inch spoon, what kind of gear are you running? Are you using a composite rod? Are you running it on just whatever you have? What kind of line do you usually run? Like, what's the ideal setup for a starter 5-inch spoon?
I think you can kind of use any rod. It just comes down to the feel of it, like your 7 medium heavy all the way to like a heavy, or like a 7 all the way to like a 7.6 is what I throw. I throw a 7.6 heavy, fast action, 8 gear ratio, 15 to 17 pound fluoro. And that just seems to work for me. I treat it just like throwing a big swim bait. I don't fight those fish. I just crank them in and boat flip them. You're dealing with a big chunk of metal, and so you're going to lose a lot of fish if you just let them fight and jump.
Before we jump over to Damon, do you use the same rod for a jigging spoon as well?
Me? Oh, yeah. Jigging spoon, you can kind of get away with a little bit smaller rod. So like I guess you can say like a frogging rod or a flipping stick. I do prefer something with more backbone. I know there's people that like almost like a crankbait rod, softer tip. But I mean, I've just lost too many fish at the net with the rod being too soft.
Interesting.
How about you, Damien?
Yeah, for me, same thing like what Taz says, 15 to 70 pound test, 17, fluorocarbon. The lighter, the better for your spoons. But you don't want to go too light because you're not fighting these fish. You're horsing them in to flip them in because it's just a hunk of metal, so they're gonna shake that off pretty easily. But yeah, that's basically what I like. But the rod itself is gonna be. Honestly, anything you got will work. But you don't want something too soft. I would prefer something medium heavy when you throw your basically Senkos and stuff on. That's what I prefer. Unless if I'm throwing a bigger spoon, maybe like a 8-inch spoon, I'll go to a flipping stick. But for the most part, it's just gonna be whatever you have. But the high speed gear ratio definitely is a must. You need a high speed gear ratio, 7 minimum. For the spoons.
Straight fluorocarbon?
Yeah, straight fluorocarbon. You want some kind of give. If it's kind of a braid to fluoro, you're gonna pull a lot of fish. They're gonna tear off a lot.
And speaking of braid to leader, are there any applications with a spoon that you actually do prefer braid to leader, or is it almost always fluorocarbon?
Almost always fluorocarbon.
Same here, fluorocarbon.
So you wouldn't do braid to leader if you were ripping a flutter spoon over grass?
No, I would still just do fluorocarbon.
Still straight fluoro?
Yeah, just straight fluoro.
Yeah, you need a lot of give when they do hit it. That fluorocarbon definitely is a little better than that braid. That braid is just straightens out your hooks.
Yeah. no surprise there. With the way that these two guys set hooks, I wouldn't be surprised if those hooks straighten out. I've seen them really wail on fish, and I wouldn't be surprised if it breaks hooks.
So, and I guess I have another question back on your mag spoon. Like, for me, I've thrown it a lot. I actually, I guess I shouldn't say a mag spoon. I've thrown the mini mag a lot. I've had 2 fish on it that I've landed, and probably 20 bites that I have not successfully hooked up. Is that something you also experience?
Do you have a mini mag in there, Taz? There's gonna be some people that don't know what a mini mag is.
I don't.
Okay.
A mini mag is like, I guess the best way I would describe it is if you're interested in Magnum flutter spoons, but you don't quite have the balls to throw a 8-inch or 10-inch or whatever, how ridiculously big some of those Magnum spoons get. It's like right in between. I think it's like 6.5 or something like that, 7 inches,
6.5.
like that.
So it's going to be kind of similar to like the Big Larry. This is a 6.5, 2.5 pounds. The design's just going to be more rounded, like the traditional ones. But yeah, this one definitely it gets bit, but again, it is a big spoon. So, like if you're fishing around a lot of spotted bass, they're going to strike at this section right here. Sometimes I even downsize the treble hook to a smaller one, especially around the spotted bass. But this one would definitely draw them from a distance versus like a smaller, like 5-inch flutter spoon.
Yeah, so what I've noticed with when I throw or when I do pick up the mini mag, I don't have forward facing, so I can't watch like Damian. But one of the things that keys me into their interest is, most of the time I'll actually start with the mini mag before I throw any other size of flutter spoon if I'm going to throw a flutter spoon. And I'll actually look for fish that drift under my 2D after I finish a cast. So like that. For those of you who don't have forward-facing sonar and want to know if fish are interested in following, if you just stop before you make another cast and watch to see if fish drift under your boat, odds are they're following it. So I usually start with that. And like you said, if I go to Maloney's or McClure or any of those places and I throw a mini mag, you'll get hits, right? You'll raise it up, and then as soon as you kill it, you'll get like clobbered, but nothing will be there. Actually, the only 2 fish I've actually successfully landed were at Clear Lake both times on that mini mag. I've never landed another fish otherwise. And they weren't big. They were like 3-pounders or something like that. But I've never been able to hook up fish elsewhere other than more largemouth oriented fisheries on those size. Now,
I don't have any confidence.
Dixie spoons, you can catch anything on a Dixie spoon. But they get tangled in themselves all the time. That's the one thing I really dislike about a Dixie spoon. I don't know if you feel the same.
I've never thrown those Dixie spoons, so.
Really? You've never thrown a Dixie spoon?
The wide one, right? Not the big one.
I've only thrown the smaller size. So they make the Talon and they make the Falcon, and I can't remember which one's which. I have the smaller size, which is more like, it's still bigger than like your standard 5-inch spoon. I think it's a 6-inch spoon, and I think it weighs 1.5 ounces. But it's not like the full Dixie spoon that's like 3 inches thick or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's much slower than the mini mag, and again, much slower than pretty much every other spoon I've thrown. I haven't thrown a ton. Like you said, I started with the Strike Kings, and those things were awful, and now they're just rust piles in a box somewhere and haven't seen daylight in forever. And then I've got a bunch of jigging spoons, because jigging spoons I feel like is friendlier in my opinion. I don't know if it's just because it's a smaller profile and you catch way more fish on it, but I've got like 10 or 15 different styles of jigging spoons, and those, if I go out and I put enough time into it, I pretty much always catch a fish on it any time of the year. But the flutter spoons for me is the weird one.
Yeah, so this brings up a question I have too. Do you guys consider a blade bait in the spoon category? Because it's metal. I mean, obviously, it's in its own category in like the tackle side of it. It's its own category. But can you fish a blade bait, or can you fish a spoon like a blade bait? As in, does a lot of it cross over?
It does, just like a LV 500 lipless. You know, it kind of just falls right into that same category. It's the same technique. That's why I'm surprised you're not throwing the flutter spoon, Max. But
I
yeah, the
remember
blade bait,
comments.
I have it in the same section as my flutter spoons too. So I'd say yeah, it falls under the same category. Usually, if I'm on that bite, I would definitely throw a blade bait just to switch it up. Maybe it's the vibration they're more keyed in on versus the flutter and all that. hmm So definitely, if I'm on that bite, I'm gonna have a jigging spoon on, a flutter spoon, and a blade bait.
Do you find that, fishing these spoons, clear water helps more, or do you find that stained water helps more?
I've done well on like Eastman when it was like pea soup, and so
Mhm.
it's kind of hard to say.
Well, I'll jump in there because that's my home pond. It's just pea soup on that top layer, and then as soon as it goes through that top layer, then it's actually pretty clear. I mean, me and Damien had this talk too. It's actually really clear. It's just that surface that's pea soup.
Well,
So
relatively clear. It's always tannic, but it's
It's-
relatively clear. It's not
It-
party clear. It's not totally clear, but it's
anything over 3 feet of viz is clear to me, Joseph.
yes.
It's pretty clear once you get below the surface. I remember I was with a friend on a boat and dropped the aqua view down, and you can see quite far out, and you can see the fish coming to the aqua view. It's just the surface is kind of dirty, but wherever there's a little light penetration, it is extremely clear.
Yeah, because I like at the boat ramp, literally, I can see down like 7 feet at the boat ramp, and that's too clear for me. I like at least having, only 3 feet of viz, but that's just me. But how do you categorize a blade bait, Damien? Do you throw
Yeah,
that
I
in
would.
the spoon too?
I
Yeah.
do. But it's kind of like a hybrid, like kind of like like LV 500. But as it gets, I fish the blade bait more when it gets colder. Kind of like when I'm uh, flopping a jigging spoon. I'll be doing that with
Yeah.
a silver buddy, a sonar, a blade bait. Those are really good presentations. Just fish it vertical, let it fall all the way to the bottom, and just hard snaps, and just let it fall to the bottom. And a lot of times that vibration draws them. Then I've seen it, especially like at Lake Success, that vibration definitely draws a lot of fish. But those fish get kind of picky. They won't bite a jiggy. They won't bite a jiggy spoon or a flutter spoon, even if you're doing the same. But just because of the vibration, you'll see fish come up to it. You see one come to it, and then the second one comes, and then when the third one arrives, the first one that saw it, he'll eat it. And so it's kind of like it has to be extremely cold for me to really be throwing that blade bait. But yeah, I would say that falls into the spoon kind of category as well.
Yeah. And we're gonna jump off topic here. What do you call 4 Asians and 1 white guy? I don't know who it is because the StreamYard is messing with me, but
Sean,
oh, is it Sean?
Latham.
Sean Lee.
Yeah. Hey, so I got a question for you guys. With my experience using a flutter spoon or a jigging spoon, I tend to key in more on like dirt and rock. Would you guys say that it's effective in a grass fishery too? I don't want to say delta because delta is a shallow grass fishery. I'm pretty sure maybe there is, a place on the delta where it could be effective. But like in terms of like just a grass fishery, like a reservoir that's a grass fishery, would you guys say that a spoon can play in a grass fishery reservoir?
I think it can, as long as you got fish that are schooled up chasing, whether it's like shiners, crappies, bluegills, they'll definitely hit a flutter spoon. And when I fished Don Pedro, I was actually pitching it was a 6-inch flutter spoon around this island in probably less than 10 feet, fishing it almost like a swim bait, because you don't always have to just hop it off the bottom. You can cast it over there and reel it back. And just like if you're trout fishing with a Castmaster, it still gives off really good action, a lot of flash. And so you don't always have to fish it deep. You can fish it shallow, right over the top of the grass, snap it just like you would a lipless or something out of the grass, and they'll still bite it.
Gotcha.
That's what we needed at Bam Delta because there was so much bait. We needed a flutter spoon.
Yeah.
We were all throwing chatterbaits and underspins and all sorts of things. We should have been throwing a
Should
flutter
have been
spoon.
spooning.
Yeah, should have been spooning.
Do you have a recommendation then on that of a spoon that stays shallower?
No,
what would be a
they're
really
not really-
slow flutter?
They're not really buoyant enough to like stay up, so I think it just comes down to like just the way you work it, I guess.
I do know. I'll throw a fun fact out there. They do actually make a grass spoon. It's called a weedless spoon by Hopkins, I believe. If you guys give me a second here, I will find it and show you guys because I consider throwing it on the Delta.
Is that the one with the metal guard on it?
Yes, it is the one with the metal guard. And essentially, you just fish it like a spinnerbait almost. You chuck it out there and just start reeling. And then as you kill it, it does that flutter just like how a flutter spoon would. More so, I guess it's more so of a. There we go. Let me throw this up here for you guys. Right there. So just like a weedless spoon, it's just you just throw it out there. I've seen videos, I watch bass resource videos. I've never had any success doing it, but essentially it's just like a flutter spoon that you cast out there and wind it in like a Castmaster. So,
Well, I'm not going to throw any names, but I know somebody who does like to rip that giant Dixie spoon out of grass. And he may or may not have caught a 9 something, whatever it was, 993 out of Tulloch doing it.
I know who you're talking about.
I don't know who you're talking about.
Was that during a derby?
I think it was. Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was during the Derby. You're right.
Gotcha.
But yeah, a little bit deeper grass, like 10, 15 foot.
Well,
But was letting it settle on the top of the grass and then was ripping it from the surface of the grass.
Well, he told me that he was fishing docks with it, though.
I mean,
This-
I guess he
This
wanted
said
to
person.
tell-
Yeah.
wanted to
This
tell you
said-
guys whatever, but somebody was watching him and told me that he was letting it sit. He was watching it on live scope, and those docks on those lakes all have grass all around them. So he was finding docks that had that grass line somewhere in that 10 to 15 foot mark and was ripping it free from grass underneath the dock. And what was happening is the fish would follow it down to the grass and then stare at it. And then when it ripped free and suddenly jerked, they were reacting and smacking it.
So it was docks, Max, with grass.
Docks with grass.
So I was right. It wasn't just grass. It had to have docks.
Well, it had to have docks because it was the time of the year, right? So shade,
I'm just
right?
kidding,
When it's
Joseph.
really hot, shade. But
Don't take it too personal, Joseph.
It's
I'm
okay.
just kidding.
I'm the one white guy, so you got to single me out.
Well, to be
Yeah.
fair, I can't really trust anything that said person says anyways, because I can never tell if he's being honest or not honest. So swivel or no swivels. We'll start with flutter spoons and jigging spoons. No. You guys like swivels on them? No swivels?
Always.
Swivels. Damien?
Yeah, for flutter spoon, yes. For jigging spoon, depends on the jigging spoon. The dust spoons and those kind of Hopkins, yes. But with the Durell spoon, no swivels.
Interesting. Snap swivels or
Nope.
or swivels and then a ring. Do you guys
For
use snap
the
swivels at all? For the
No,
spoons in
snaps.
general. No snaps. Neither you guys using like snap swivels?
Split rings, 2 swivel.
Um
Oh, there's a good question. What's your PB on a spoon? I mean, you said jigging spoon, but let's just say spoon in general.
yeah, spoon in general.
I would say for me, that 7-Eleven spot from Pine Flat.
7-Eleven spot.
Yep.
That's a tank. That's a tank and a half.
Largemouth, probably the one from Berryessa. I had one probably pushing 9 at Berryessa. And again, I used the wrong rod. It was a medium heavy, and I missed it right at the net. I'm thinking it was probably pushing 9. But the one off that bridge was probably my biggest largie. That one or the one at Pine Flat. Right around like that 6.5 pound.
What
For
about
you,
for
Damon?
tuxedo fish?
Yeah. Oh,
Haven't caught any big ones yet.
No?
Not yet.
All right, Damien, go.
So
Tell us
for
it's
me,
a 10
I haven't.
pounder.
No, I haven't caught any giants on it. Biggest one is a 7.6. But that same day I caught that 7.6, I caught over 30 pounds in 5 casts with the flutter spoon. And that's probably my most epic day I've had. It was every fish was at least 6 pounds, and it was every cast. And it was the windiest day that I've ever fished. I was the only boat on the lake, and I had that big old Magnum flutter spoon, and it was every cast. And that spoon couldn't even get to the bottom, and there was a 6+ on it every cast. So.
That's crazy.
take me, Damien. What the hell? We live like, close to
Teach
each other.
me.
It
Yeah.
was your home pond. That's where it was at, man. That's where it happened.
Yeah. Take me. Gosh. Stop going during the weekdays. Go during the weekends with me. I gotta work during the weekdays.
Hey, you got to change jobs, Max.
Yeah.
Work weekends.
Yeah, I gotta find a new job as well.
Change careers, man. Change careers, bro.
Yeah. I gotta find a night job so that I can go fish during the day with Damien. Oh, that's a good question. How many tournament wins do you think we've had in total?
Don't look at me.
I mean, Damien only has like 30 or something like that tournament wins.
No.
I thought it was
And
more
it's-
than that. I can't remember
Yeah.
from the last time we stalked his stats.
Yeah. It's hard to keep up with Damien's stats.
Taz has quite a few. You can see him up there on the wall. I've been there.
Yeah.
You gotta go do a little 360 view.
Win on the spoon or just overall wins?
Just overall wins, I think, was the
Oh
question.
man, yeah. Stop keeping track.
We'll just say that it's over 50 between just Taz and Damien.
I do remember
Yeah.
being second a lot, and the first place was Taz. I do remember that a lot.
I just got lucky.
No, you said that, but then you caught a 7-pound spot. I was like, bro, man, I caught 2 5-pounders at McLaren. You catch a 7-pound spot. Oh man,
I still remember that one.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Are you
Wasn't
higher
that-
than Taz? Before
Not
we
at the
continue
moment.
this? No? Okay.
Not at the moment. Yeah. Sorry, guys.
If anything, Taz would hire me first Just saying. I would apply first to go work for Tas.
Hey, hire me, man. I'm unemployed, bro. Help me out, man.
You have a great career path, Damien. You don't need to be employed.
Yeah, you don't need to be
Very
employed.
true. Yep.
Yeah. I'll trade you career paths. How about that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll trade jobs with you any day. Oh, that's great. So, spoon wax. Is there anything that you guys feel like we're leaving out here besides just going out there and figuring out and throwing it? Is there anything you guys feel like any beginner tips to really put guys on a bite, I guess you could say, or help them gain confidence in fishing a spoon?
I do get a lot of questions. People asking me, "Oh, I throw the spoon. I can't catch nothing. Where do you go?" And I think people think it's like a jig or a drop shot or a Senko. And you do have to find those schools of feeding fish, whether it's on the point or in the back of a creek channel or on a flat, you have to find them feeding. Or else if it's just like one or two fish cruising, most likely they're not going to bite it. So the key is to find the bait fish, to find those schools that are chasing the bait fish, and that's how you're going to get those spoonfish.
For you, Damien, what's
So for
your
me,
beginner tip?
if you're a beginner and you're really trying to learn it, I would say look for vertical structure. That's the quickest way to figure it out is look for vertical structure. Bridge pilings is it's a very easy one. Look, vertical structure is a very easy way to get a lot of spoon bites. And like if you don't have forward fishing sonar, wherever you're fishing a deep jig, don't be afraid to throw that spoon onto that spot and let it hit the bottom. Let it sit on the bottom for a bit and give it some hard rips. A lot of times they'll bite it when it's just laying on the ground. They'll pick it up when it's sitting there. So if you're really trying to learn it, wherever you're fishing a jig deep, throw that flutter spoon. Don't be afraid to get it snagged. A lot of times if it gets snagged, it's a very easy bait to get out of the rocks. So you got to put that spoon in those kind of sticky areas. But vertical structure and wherever you're going to throw a jig deep, that's where you're going to be able to catch a lot of fish on a spoon if you don't have forward fishing sonar, because the fish that are on bait, the forward fishing sonar does help to find these fish. But if you don't have that, it's really hard to stay on top of those fish. So it's really hard for a beginner to kind of do that. But I would say set off deep on a deep point or island top and these vertical structures, standing timber or bridge pilings. It's going to be a quick way to catch spoonfish, so you can really get the feel of it.
Man,
yeah,
that's
I'm no expert, but I can say from somebody who has watched these two absolutely slay and been inspired to try spooning. If you don't have forward-facing sonar and you do have 2D side scan and down scan, you can use it to get feedback pretty easily. It just means that instead of having the luxury of turning your sonar and real watching what's happening, you just kind of have to take a guess at what's happening based off of changes in your side scan and down scan. So I've actually watched fish intentionally, casting into my side scan or casting next to my side scan, watch fish drift in the same direction of my cast. So you can kind of follow them that way. And it gives you feedback as to whether or not there are fish interested in what you're doing. Now, the retrieve and all the skill and everything else, I leave that to Tas and Damian because I clearly cannot figure that out for the life of me.
I was just gonna say that's only something Damien can do with the spoon. Throw it out there and leave it on the bottom. I mean, most guys are gonna snag them. Bro. I'm just like, yeah, I'll probably snag.
Yeah. I was thinking the exact same thing. Damien's a great salesman for spoons. He's trying to sell a lot of spoons right now.
That's a great.
Throw in the
pitch,
rock and
man.
get it stuck, okay? Make sure to get it stuck.
Yeah.
That's funny. Well, gentlemen, is there anything else in spoon territory that you guys would like to throw in?
I guess maybe we can just ask the audience if anybody has any last minute questions before we release these gentlemen to the rest of their evening. Can we all spoon of the team
That's
tournament?
AJ.
Yeah, I feel like this I feel like this is a Diddy question. Is what I feel like this is.
Save it for after dark when I'm not here.
Yeah, that's what I feel like this question is trying to point at: is can we all spoon at the team tournament? It feels like it's a Diddy question. So I'll say no. But yeah, any question from anybody that wants to throw on before we let these two gentlemen go? Damian still has to drive home since he's on the side of the road, and then also Tats still has a store.
Close
So
up. Yep.
I don't want to keep these gentlemen for too long. Rob Reels change hooks. There you go. That's a good question. Hooks. Size, and I guess you were talking about the tensils on the hook earlier, Taz. Do you?
Yes. Make sure it has some kind of tensile feather on there. When I'm on that spoon bite, I always carry extra treble hooks because, like Damien said, I mean, dropping it to the bottom around rocks and stuff, it's going to get dull. So you always want to check your hooks. And if it's dull, then definitely just swap them out.
How about hair? Have you tried using like a hair or a feather treble versus tensile? Does that?
Yeah, I've done it with like a single hook. Just trying to see if I can improve on my hookup ratio to keep those fish pinned longer. And it definitely helps out too. The feather, the tensile, I think it doesn't really matter much. Even with the feather, I still add a little bit of the flash on there.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
So for me, I always carry one. So I buy two of the singing spoon. I fish one without the tinsel and one with it. The one without the tinsel will actually dart faster. So sometimes I like that without the tinsel. And that definitely helps the bait glide a lot further if you're fishing like docks and stuff, pontoon boats. It definitely helps you glide further because that tinsel kind of does have some resistance. Because the way how it glides, the hook folds over the spoon to start fluttering or shooting a certain direction. But I do prefer sometimes without the tinsel, and a lot of times they do run a lot of stinger hooks. Stinger hooks are definitely help a lot if you're not fishing off the bottom. When you're fishing around suspended fish or fish around bridge pilings, that stinger hooks.
When you say a
definitely.
stinger hook, do you mean like how the Duo has the braided section to a treble, or do you just put a treble on the upper split ring?
I use the dual one. So basically, I buy the drag metal spoons, and I'll take those stinger hooks off and put them on my flutter spoons.
Interesting.
Like the assist hooks, yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
the assist hooks.
Yeah.
Do you sell those, Taz? Do you have any?
I do, but it's like a 1/0 or something.
I think I bought all your smaller ones. I remember
Yeah,
I bought
you
it. I cleared it out. I came back to look for more, but you didn't have any. But I bought the first set you had.
No, there ain't
Yeah, there you
no
go.
more.
Damien knows your inventory better than you know your inventory.
I shop there all the time, man. I'm your best customer, bro.
That's funny.
Hey, if Taz gets an online store, that's where I'm ordering from. So just little hints here.
What's right?
If I were 2.5 hours closer, I would come more. But that's
You can always-
a little bit of an adventure.
You can always put in the order, and I can go pick it up for you, Joseph.
Yeah, but you're not tournament fishing next year, so I'm never gonna see you.
Yeah, but I'll come drop it for you.
And so he says,
So he can
what
dish
time-
it, but he can't take it.
What time of year can you not use a spoon? Or not spoon?
Probably when
I
like
would-
the bass are spawning.
Yeah.
That's usually when majority of those fish, that's all they're focused on. You might have some that are still out there, either in pre-spawn, post-spawn, but that's usually when I don't spoon too much. Why would you want to spoon during a spawn?
I think
there's probably
that
a reason why.
Mike Long.
Mike Long.
Mike Long. No, what I think they're referring to is fish a spoon like a wacky cinco is what they're trying to refer to. Yeah, see, everybody knows Michael Long
Yeah.
spooning.
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody
They
knows.
get it. Yeah, they get it. So if you see somebody with a spoon during the spawn, you already know what's going on.
Actually, I don't pre-spawn. I guess I was targeting either post-spawn or pre-spawn during the spawn, but that was when I caught both of my fish on a floater spoon. But I was out on lake points.
Did you get him in the mouth or?
I did, yes.
Oh, okay.
The only spoon I have ever snagged fish with is that Dixie spoon, and that's because they come up and they hit it, and oh my god, I mean, you'd have to show them it, but basically the Dixie spoon has 3 treble hooks in it. It's got 1 at the bottom and then 2 at the sides. When they hit that thing, it just goes everywhere. And usually what ends up happening when they jump on the surface is the top 2 get hooked on the top of their head, and then you reel them in on the top of their head and the back one's free. So I don't know if it's technically legal for tournament fishing, but that's the only time I've ever snagged a fish with a spoon.
So you say.
If I snag more fish, I catch a lot more 8-pounders, okay? And I probably have a few $1,000 fish in my pocket.
We'll leave it on this one. The worst spoon. The worst spoon the spoon that you do not recommend at all. We'll just leave it at that. Let's not say the worst spoon.
I don't think there's any bad spoon on the market. You might have to just add some, different hardwares on it, but I think they're all pretty good. Maybe not out of the package, but once you put the right stuff on there, it'll work just like any other spoon.
Yeah, they're all pretty much the same. As in, they're all pretty good. But then, if you have a pool, definitely experiment a lot with your spoons, because you'd be surprised. Some of them do some different stuff, and it's gonna come play a lot of situations where some spoons just get bit more, and you kind of figure it does something a little bit more different. So I would say experiment.
We'll throw this one in there too. When are you getting your boat, Damian?
Oh, shoot. Man, I'd like to get one, but man, dude, it's just so expensive. It's hard to find a place to store it, and I'd love to have a boat.
Damien's like the ultimate fishing buddy. He just comes on your boat and catches all the fish for you.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
And he has lots of friends with lots of boats.
I like to go out and net people's fish with them. It's pretty fun,
You don't net fish. Everybody else nets for you. I've been on the boat with you. I know how it goes.
Our viewers have a great mind. Experimenting spooning. Oh dear. All right, gentlemen. It seems like everybody just wants to talk about Diddy and such. So
All right, I think it's time to call it.
yeah, I think that might be time to call it. Huge difference between LBS 34 and 32. Absolutely.
Yes, 9-day difference.
Yeah, absolutely. I think me and Damian are the only guys that use Taz. You might have used it on a boat before, right, Taz?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I didn't know the difference. Yep. Big difference.
Yeah, is it worth it to upgrade? Definitely, I would say so.
Yeah, especially if you fish a lot. I've seen LBS 32s, and about 60 foot is kind of fuzzy, and then at 34 I could see out to 135 foot. So yeah, that's double the distance. That's double your spooning distance.
I don't have them, but I have experienced that LVS 34 is like massively improved, even just in separation. Like I couldn't use my buddy's boat to follow a mini mag spoon, which is a giant chunk of metal, and he has the LVS 32, but I could follow my spoon no problem on Matt's boat, which is the LVS 34. Like I didn't even have to try to find my spoon. I could see it hit the water pretty much, whereas I couldn't even find it half the time on 32.
Yeah, you were gonna say something, Damian?
Sorry.
Well, I think the time that really sold me on it is when I went to Trinity with John, and I had the 32 and he had the 34, and there's a bunch of stick ups. I didn't see any fish in the stick ups, right? But when he showed me his, you could see all the bass swimming in the stick ups that are hugging the bottom. They're slowly creeping on the bottom, and he was able to see everything clearly, and I couldn't see anything. All I see was just the tops of the stick ups, but I couldn't see the fish that was in it. It just looked like rocks to me, but for him, it was picking up every single fish.
Yeah, I agree. If you could afford the upgrade, definitely upgrade. Yeah, it's 9-day difference.
And I've used Active Target 2 quite a bit as well. And if it's dialed in, which that's the difference, I feel like LVS 34 out of the box is easier, in my opinion. I guess you don't have to do as much to get a clear image. But if you do know what you're doing and you do dial in Active Target 2, it's kind of like in between the two. It's still very clear, still pretty far out, but not as good, in my opinion, as still LVS 34, but it definitely takes way more setting changes to get to that out of the box than 34 does.
I find that the active target has a delay versus the Garmin. The active target seems to be when I jig my spoon, it'll show after already. So I find that a lot of fish that I'm targeting has already moved on, but the screen has been delayed. That's what I find a lot with the active target.
With the 2 or with the original?
I believe it was the original. I think.
Yeah.
No,
So
no, no, no. It's
2.
not the original. Yeah, I think it might have been the 2.
I mean,
There's
I used
there's a
2.
delay.
I mean, probably. I haven't thrown spoons on 2, but I have thrown bottom contact stuff, and I can follow my bait down to the bottom and see fish swimming and stuff. But out of the box, like the first time I used it, it was awful. And then after my friend had some time to dial it in, it was much more comparable to LVS 34. I mean,
So
if
for
you
me,
close my eyes, I would be able to tell the difference.
yeah, for me, between the two, active target, it doesn't have that little bit of buzz feedback for me. So I feel like I don't know. So say if I set it out to 200 feet, I don't know exactly if I could see 200 feet because it's just that black screen on active target 2 versus on the LVS 32 or 34 or the Garmin version. There's that little bit of buzz or feedback into it. So I feel like you know how far you can see out versus as on active target 2 from what I've seen, you don't know how far you can see out until you get your bait into the picture, if that makes sense, because it doesn't pop. So on a Garmin, you can actually see the fuzz in the water, the air bubble, whatever, on an LVS 32, and you can see that, I can see it out 130 foot, whatever. Versus on active target 2 or the Lowrance version, it's just a black screen, a black slate screen, so you don't see none of that, that fuzz. So you don't know exactly whether your lure is on the screen or not until it's already on the screen. I don't know if that makes sense. Yeah,
It does, but we're going on a tangent, and I feel bad. Taz has got to get home to his family.
Yeah.
No, it's okay. My wife's
Damian-
still at the shop with me, so I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Well, we still don't want to get you in trouble. We can talk about another tournament.
Yeah, I want to answer this. I want to answer this for Dominic first. You can only win tournaments if you fish tournaments.
Yeah.
So I'll leave that there. But all right, gentlemen, we'll leave it there. Just a quick kind of announcement for everybody that is still here. Next Wednesday, we're going to kick off a new show. It's probably going to be wild, a free for all show. So if anybody's free Wednesday at 6, tune in, jump on the show, ask your questions away. We're just going to chat, have a good time on Wednesday. Open discussion. So if anybody wants to get on the StreamYard, jump on and we'll just talk. So that's all I got for you. You guys got anything before we take off?
Just want to say thanks to both of you for making it tonight. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Taz. Thanks, Damian.
Yep.
I think we
Thanks
gotta
for
have
having
Taz
me.
on more too. The tackle shop is kind of a cool backdrop.
Yeah,
Yep. We gotta have Taz on more. We'll make time for Taz somehow.
definitely.
All right, good night,
And with
guys.
that,
All right,
Hey,
boys.
thanks for
All right,
having us
Good
on,
night.
man.
Get
Yep.
home
That's
safe,
fine.
everyone.
Damian.
Get home
You
safe.
guys have a good one.
All righty.